welcome back. Happy New Year. I hope all is well. Today we're talking about Euphoria Season 2, Episode 1, and it's back. So there's a lot to unpack. If I miss a few details, please forgive me. Like, the gap between the first season and the second it's been pretty big. And I enjoyed this episode for a lot of reasons. First, there's this tension throughout where I really thought somebody would die. Like, I didn't know, I thought we were going to start the season off with a major character death because they kept taking us to the edge and bringing us back. You know, it was a really solid, first episode. The soundtrack was very nice. And I thought it was brilliant that they started off with background on Fez through Fez's grandmother, because it was a wonderful build up to the end of the episode where Nate gets his, he gets what he deserves. And, there's a new sheriff in town. So the episode opens up, it's New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and New Year, same old, right? And we start off with Fez's grandmother, and Fez's grandmother, this whole sequence was so smart. It was so smart, and in terms of plot development leading up to the end, I thought it was just brilliant. Fez's grandmother taught Fez everything that he knows, and she is cold-blooded. She was kind of a mix of business and also she was very kind-hearted, it seemed, towards him. And she treated him like an adult from a young age, right? She always referred to him as his partner. And it kind of explains his relationship to Ash, this little kid that we don't know much about until now. So this kid that, just has this look in his eye that he's going to kill you at any moment, he was abandoned by his mother as collateral, and she pretty much never came back for him. And so Fez took the responsibility of taking care of him. So for that, he's very, 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 protective of him. And Fez's grandmother is really interesting, especially in contrast to Fez, right? So she, as I said, she's the reason why he's involved in the drug trade. She taught him everything that he knows. And there's one scene in particular I thought that was really interesting, is when Fez's grandmother is just beating on this one guy. And Fez kind of comes out of nowhere and says, stop. He tries to stop his grandmother from beating this man to death. And he even says he's not sure why he did what he did. But I think it was an interesting sort of, you guys let me know what you think. But I thought, when I look at Fez, I don't see him as a violent person. I think he's someone who's been, who has developed the stomach for this. He doesn't really have the stomach for this. Especially when you compare him to someone like his partner Ash, who will kill you in a second. I don't think Fez has that instinct. He can do it if he has to. So his instinct to kind of stop his grandmother is interesting, because then at the end of the episode, he's really he really has something to prove, right? He doesn't want to be seen as this weakling, which is why he nearly beats Nate to death. But we fast forward to the present day, and it's business as usual. Fez is talking to Mouse, and from what I recall of Mouse, he was just kind of a really slimy dude. I didn't like him. He gave Rue fentanyl. I just remember thinking he was kind of icky. And apparently so did Ash, so he comes out of nowhere and pretty much kills him. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Fez was expecting that. And that pretty much sends them spiraling. So they have to kind of get ahead of this before it gets ahead of them. And that's the thing about the drug trade, right? It's kind of kill or be killed. So Fez is in a weird position, and he has to make new contacts. He has to save face and, take responsibility for this murder and really, portray the image that he's not a man to be messed with. And so, quickly they start to pursue a new contact, and for some reason they bring Rue along with them. And I'm not sure why they brought her along. Rue is in the thick of it. She's obviously not doing very well. She's just out of her mind. And this whole scene leading up to the apartment was just chaotic, right? So Fez meets his contact, and automatically the whole thing looks shady. This contact is just terrified. He's like, make sure, everyone's quiet. And Fez is like, okay, desperate times calls for desperate measures, I guess. And this whole scene with Rue in the car with this other girl, I forgot how graphic the show was, And Rue automatically starts talking about Jules, right? She's like, my girlfriend, she left me, she left me, and I think for Rue, Jules leaving her left her paralyzed. Like, the way she talks about it, it's as if it happened yesterday. And this kind of is triggering her spiral. Like, she's not able to kind of get out of it. And this other girl does not care. And this whole thing of her putting heroin in her private, like, that was a lot. I was like, what just happened? And I guess they made enough of a ruckus that they were kind of dragged into this apartment. And this apartment scene was so chaotic. I'm still processing it. I'm not really sure what was going on here. So you have a bunch of enforcers, you know, they're trying to like it was a whole vibe, you know. You had this guy with a shotgun, and I thought somebody was gonna die or something really bad was gonna happen. And then meanwhile, you have this woman who looks like a soccer mom sitting calmly in a chair. She looks like she could just be literally like a soccer mom, like any regular person you'd see walking down the street. But apparently she's a drug dealer, and from the looks of it, she might be a very good one. And again, I thought it was so clever that Fez's new contact is a female drug dealer, considering his grandmother. And so Fez is able to, you know, talk to this woman, but not before being tortured beforehand. And this scene of them stripping and that soundtrack playing, that song, this was a really well sort of orchestrated scene, right? Like, that song they were playing was perfect. It kind of like took you out of it, but also really kind of put you in it. And Rue, you know, this whole, like, she almost lost her life a few times this episode, and like, she's not even close to her rock bottom, right? Like, she literally, like, she's not there. And so after this whole debacle, this woman, Lori, agrees to talk with Fez, and Fez has to save face. He's like, you know what? I had to get rid of Mouse. I didn't like the way he did business. But what was interesting is how he describes Rue and how he described Ash. He described Ash as his partner. And again, he treats him like an adult because that's how his grandmother treated him. But he calls Rue his family. And I think at one point in the flashback, his mother said, you know, love is an emotion you can't really trust. And I wonder why Fez continues to sort of enable Rue, right? Like, she's obviously out of her mind. He's making the situation worse, but for some reason he can't say no to her. And I guess it's because he sees her as family. This seemed to be a very successful meeting. They get out of there, and Rue is just out of her mind. Like, she's laughing hysterically. She's making fun of the whole situation. And the way Rue is moving through life right now, like, she's ready to die. You know, she doesn't care what's behind door. Like, she doesn't care. And Fez is so annoyed. He's like, that was terrifying. We almost, like, he's getting annoyed because he's like, why don't you take anything seriously? And again, Rue's whole mindset at this point is like, she's gone. You know, she's totally just out of it. And so they make their way to this New Year's party. So we get to the New Year's Eve party, and this party was, you know, brilliant for a lot of reasons because it was a recipe for disaster. If one thing went wrong or somebody saw something they should not have seen, like, there could have been a body count, you know, like, everybody was like just 1 degree of separation from something horrible happening. And, you know, let's start with like the lead up to this crazy ending. So let's start with Nate, Cassie, and Maddie. And this whole sequence, I thought for sure somebody was getting killed off. I'm like, this is not gonna end well. So Nate is feeling on top of the world, you know? And I remember his father telling him, like, I don't know how you got out of this mess, but I hope it didn't teach you the wrong lesson. So Nate managed to, you know, survive the last season, and it seems like he thinks he's untouchable. So he bumps into Cassie outside a gas station, and Cassie's not doing that well either, right? She's still coping with her abortion. And she's in a difficult position because she tried being a good girlfriend. She tried, and now she's thinking, what is the point? You know, like, she wants to try, but she also kind of wants to give up. She had a fight with her sister, and she's just kind of over the whole thing, right? And she has a conversation with Nate, and she says, you know, I keep making mistakes, but I'm not learning from any of them. And this whole bit of them chatting, like, that escalated quickly, right? So he offers her a ride to the party, and this whole truck sequence, like, I thought for sure they were gonna crash or something really bad was gonna happen because Nate was going like 100. He was driving faster and faster, and he was drinking. And at first I thought it was because he was suicidal, and then I realized it's because he thinks he can't be touched. And Cassie at first is afraid, and then she kind of lets go, right? Like she's afraid, and then she realizes, you know what, I don't actually care. And she just gives in to Nate, and they start making out, and that just escalated so quickly because it was a disaster, and things could have gotten considerably worse because while they're making out, Maddie starts banging on the door. And this whole bathroom sequence, again, was just a recipe for disaster. I thought for sure Maddie would pick up on it. Like, I was just waiting. I thought that would be the climax. And this episode did a good job of teasing us, you know, like, because that whole bit with Fez beating up Nate, like, I clued into it as the episode was ending, but I really wasn't looking out for it because there were so many other things to look out for. So Maddie's banging on the door, and Nate gets the brilliant idea of hiding Cassie in the bathtub. And so Cassie hides in the bathtub, and she's crying, and she's like, Maddie's my best friend. And I kept thinking, girl, she was your best friend. Like, she's no longer your best friend. And by the skin of her teeth, she's able to, like, get away with it, but not without somebody seeing her first. So luckily for Cassie, Maddie makes a new friend, and he's a new character, I guess, Travis. And they're talking, and they're kicking it. And the whole time, Nate is just outside. Like, the whole party, Nate is just watching the bathroom, right? Like, he's just like, where is Cassie? Like, he's just kind of like hoping that nothing horrible happens, right? Like, he's ready to defuse the situation if need be. Thankfully, Cassie kind of is able to sneak out. But while Maddie and Travis are talking, Travis kind of, you know, like, Cassie's phone rings, and it's Travis that saw her. And the look that this Travis guy gives Nate on the way out with Maddie as they're dancing on the floor, like, that's definitely gonna come back hard. Like, he looked at Nate like, you are one messy individual. So Cassie makes it out, but again, like, this whole bit with her making out with Nate, that's gonna come back to bite her. I don't know how, but it will. And so she makes it out. She's unhappy the whole night. She looks kind of petrified the whole night. And to make matters worse, her ex-boyfriend comes into the room, Mckay. And I thought it was so interesting that Mckay and Nate were like, I think at one point Mckay said to Nate, like, are you waiting for somebody? Like, because Nate was just kind of like looking over at the door, and, you know, Mckay couldn't really put two and two together. And whether or not he will, I'm not really sure. But Mckay pulls Cassie aside, and they have a conversation. And, you know, I was like, dude, what do you want her to say? You know, like, I don't think they've spoken since the abortion, and this is the first time they're talking. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. And Cassie, you know, she kind of says, I don't even think I'm a good person, or I don't know if I'm a good person. You know, I don't think I should be anyone's girlfriend. Like, what do you want from me? You know, like, you're the reason I got this abortion. Like, we're not going to have this conversation. So Cassie is in a really bad spot, and I don't think Mckay really had any empathy for it. You know, like, he just kind of storms off. And this whole bit with Nate and Mckay was super triggering, because Nate's whole, like, obsession with Cassie in the scene is just, I think for Nate, people are just things to be owned, you know? So the idea that, you know, somebody else has something that he owns really bothers him, because he really goes in on Mckay. He's like, so, like, what did you guys do? Where did you, like, try to get, you know, graphic details of whatever he thinks happened? And Mckay was just like, what is your problem? Like, are you okay? And eventually Nate backs off. But what I got out of that is Nate is just possessive. He is obsessive. And he's just so, like, he's on his high horse. And it's not until, like, Fez brings him down that, you know, he gets a bit of reality. And the other thing I will say about Nate is, it's funny because he spent the whole party kind of watching other people, and little did he know that he was being watched. So Fez came to this party to to essentially kill Nate, it looked like. But it seems like he may have found love. Like, this whole scene between Fez and Lexie, I thought was so cute. And I thought it was so wholesome, right? Because Lexie is a bit of a, like, chaotic person herself, but she's also very observant. And they have this very cute conversation, and I think at one point they talk about God, and she asked him about drug dealing, like how can you be a drug dealer and believe in God or something like this. I don't know, I just thought the conversation was so wholesome. And Fez, just before he kind of goes after Nate, says, girl, you should stop doubting yourself. You should stop. And for Fez, I'm not sure, because Lexie's face when she saw what Fez was about to do, like she looked pretty horrified. And again, this theme of love and as this emotion that you can't trust, might come into play with Fez. But I don't know how this is going to develop, but I thought it was cute. So before we get to the beatdown, I want to talk about Rue and Jules. But first, Rue. Rue, from the beginning of this episode, is just a disaster. She has not hit her rock bottom. And this scene, there was a scene where she lies down in Fez's car, because the whole episode she's trying to avoid Jules. Like, she notices her, but she's just like, she can't look at her, right? So she lies down in the car, and then she finds like heroin or some other type of drug, and she goes in, and then she finds somebody to do drugs with. And this character, this new friend that she made, he was a good character, because even he was horrified by Rue. So they kind of make a deal to exchange drug information. And at one point, I think Rue had taken so many drugs that night that her heart, like she was about to go into cardiac arrest. And thankfully, she had like Adderall in her sock. And she was literally instructing this kid, like, listen, you need to do this so I can get my heart back up again. But this kid was horrified, right? He was just like, I don't think it's a good thing we met. I thought we did the same amount of drugs. And Rue's reaction, like she didn't care. Like, she wasn't even afraid. And again, I don't know if it's because of the amount of drugs she took, but like, I had no words, and then she starts laughing, and the contrast between his reaction and hers, like, he was just like, girl, you almost died. And she's just like, yeah, that would have been crazy if I almost died. And Rue is in that spot where she's not alive unless she sees Jules, right? Like, everything else there's nothing worth living for, right? And then she gets her wish. So her and Jules finally are able to talk. And Jules, she hasn't had a great year, right? We kind of get snippets into her time at the party. And at one point she says, I want to erase this whole year. Like, she hasn't been doing that well either. And this conversation with Rue probably didn't make her feel much better, because she asks her, like, when did you relapse? And Rue says, well, when the night you left. The night you left is when I relapsed. And I think Jules has so much guilt in terms of like the degree of responsibility she has over Rue and why she's in the situation that she's in. And you see that just before this final scene, because at one point, like, they have this embrace, and Rue says, I love you and I want to be with you, or like, I miss you and I want to be with you. But Jules doesn't really reciprocate. Like, she doesn't say anything back. And again, I think she doesn't say anything back because she doesn't know what to say. Because as far as she's concerned, like, she wants to expand her world. She wants to hang out with different people. But at the same time, she doesn't want to feel like she abandoned her friend. So that scene, like, I guess their friendship will be rekindled. But let's just talk about that beatdown. So Fez finally gets up. He goes over to Nate. He says, what's up, Playboy? And again, that's sort of a nickname in regards to his looks, right? Because he's such a Nate is a very good looking guy, but not anymore. And so he cheers him, and then he bashes him over the head. And the way that he was beating Nate, he wanted to kill him. Like, if those people didn't take him off, like, he was gonna keep going until there was nothing left. And again, Fez is kind of like, there's a new sheriff in town, and he cannot afford to be put in a position where people think they can mess with him, right? Like, he really has to put up a strong front, let alone some, rich kid who, just this entitled rich kid. So Fez, like, bravo. I was very satisfied with that ending. I was like, damn. So overall, I thought this was a good first episode. I don't know where this is gonna go, but they kind of laid out a lot of sort of things that could explode later. So you guys let me know what you think, and it's